King, king, king. Don't worry, my friend. It's okay. We all make mistakes. What's up, guys? Elvin here, and here we are to do a breakdown / review of chapter 142 of... I almost said Jujutsu. Lord, I've been doing this for too long. Four Knights of the which is known as A Sad Crossing. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this wouldn't be on the Sad Crossing if I ever seen it before, because, man, this is a crossing of coincidences, on coincidences, around coincidences, but, you know, you gotta write a plot. I end up liking this plot. I like what it does for the characters. Makes me like some characters more. It reinforces my dislike for some characters. It turned me into a defender of characters like before. This chapter has a whole lot to chat about. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Ending me. Ready. 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. Nakaba, why are you like this? Just level with me. Let's have a conversation. Especially with the contents of this chapter. Of all the things that you could have had as the cover page for this chapter, there are like I'm thinking of 4 different ideas right now that fit this chapter. Heck. Does the cover page even match the title of the chapter? A Sad Crossing. What? Nakaba. Now I get it. Maybe you didn't want to spoil the contents of the chapter indirectly through the cover page. I understand that. Perfectly fine. But Nakaba, Mr. Suzuki, if you will. What does this have to do with anything? Why are we de-dignifying Nasians when he finally shows the most dignity we've ever seen in the entire series from the man in this chapter? Nakaba, we're going to need to have a long talk, buddy, because it's making less and less sense the more you do it. I can't stop you. I can't. But, and you know what? I can't even knock it. Not anymore, because there's been a 2-year time skip. Legally, where I'm from, this is fine. But Nakaba, don't you have limits? Don't you have, like, processes, ideas, and philosophies other than this, Nakaba? Get it out, man. Get it out. Is it because you couldn't fit it anywhere in this chapter? And that may be it. I think I now just got the reason Nakaba got freaky and deaky in this chapter in particular. For this cover page, and because he couldn't fit it anywhere in the chapter itself. That's the main reason. I'm assuming that's it, because notably, nothing. This chapter, there's a light mention of Nasian's lack of a confirmed biology. There is that, but outside of that, there's nothing that pertains to this. That's why Nakaba decided to get freaky and deaky in the cover page with this ugly behind cut. How could you do my person like this? How could you do my person like this, Nakaba? But of course, let's not waste any more time. Let's actually hop into chapter 142. So we open up, and we get to see a dinosaur? Is this not supposed to... Is this supposed to be a lizard? What is the scale of things here? Like, how big is... That has to be a dinosaur, right? Like, am I insane? Am I the only... And, like, notably, it doesn't pop up again. What is a velociraptor doing? Fresh out of nowhere. What is he doing? What are you doing? Why are you here, buddy? Why are you here? I don't know. It caught me off guard in a live reaction. We can check it over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month. And become a member for as low as $3 a month. It is 33 minutes. I was yapping in that bad boy. But with that being the case, what are you doing here? Are you going to eat them? Like, are you a natural part? What is your point? Are you a giant pet? Like, I have no collar. I'm confused. However, we see the beauty of the fairy realm. Once again, I do like that Nakaba is, like, further expanding on the realms. I'll admit, I haven't made the video yet because I'm trying to, like, compile my thoughts, and I want to do a proper full reread of the arc before I, like, buckle down and be like, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, I don't like that. But I will admit, the Demon World and its expansions, while they were nice enough, we got some lore, we got some more demon designs. I do feel like the Demon World arc ended up being a little bit underwhelming. But so far, Nakaba's really taking this chance to explore the Fairy Realm, or show us different parts of it, and really establish what it looks like on a grander scheme, rather than just Wasteland and Castle, which is basically all we got in the Demon World. Like some sightings of tiny random structures. Now, I feel like we're getting like an actual proper scope of the Fairy Realm, which is nice. I appreciate that. And of course, we see it's lunchtime. So Zana is hitting that bad boy. You know how proud I am of me for already knowing her name? I hope I'm not getting this bad. I hope this one's Zana and this one's Zillion, because I'm not gonna look it up. I will probably mess up. But with that being the case, Zana is tearing into some schmeat. And she says, yep, if you want to get a hearty meal, grilled wood boar is the way to go. And like, that's a question for you. What meals fill y'all up? Like, notably, there are some foods that I can eat, and then, like, within the span of 30 minutes, I'll be hungry again. Not 30 minutes. That's dragging. An hour. Like, sometimes I'll eat and then just immediately be hungry again later. Like, not like, oh, you know, maybe I want some dessert hungry. Like, no, I will eat till I feel like I am physically full, and then not 2 seconds later, I'll be like, I really go for something filling right now. Like, cereal, admittedly I don't eat cereal as much as I used to. Now that I actually know how to cook, I don't just need to resort to putting things in a bowl. But like, I could eat 3 bowls. If I was feeling devious, 3.5 bowls of cereal, be full, and then like 2 hours later, I'd be like, darn, did I even eat breakfast today? And I'd be empty. Sometimes it depends on the food. Like, just rice, it'll fill me up in the moment. But once again, that's another thing where it feels like it just instantly digests. If it's just rice. If I'm eating rice with stuff on it or in it, like if I'm eating fried rice, or if I'm eating like rice with like chicken or steak or beef or squid or shrimp or anything on top of it, then I'll typically get filled up for a while. Then, I don't know, maybe the meat takes like, I know meat does take longer to digest. It's why I think you're encouraged to eat meat in a low carb diet, because meat just generally takes more energy to digest. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I feel fuller longer, because my body's like, we gotta break down these proteins. But I don't know. There usually has to be some sort of meat, which sounds rough. But I can understand why Zana's like, yeah, that would be a hearty meal. Especially considering it looks like she's genuinely eating a full-on boar. Which I can't knock her for. Like, once again, Zana, while only being about half the height of her mother, I mean, she's 15 or 16, because Diane was 33.5 feet in the original series, may have gotten taller. So, for her to be about half the height of her mother, she's probably chilling at a smooth, like, 16.7 feet tall. Like, for reference, I'm 2 feet tall. So, like, Zana is 7.5 in B's. like that's the gap there. It's massive. It's tragic. It's crazy. But I don't know. It is a little bit wild to think about the fact that she could just eat one boar and be fine. Like, on a greedy day, I probably could eat like a whole full rack of ribs. And I'm a 1/7 of Zana's size. I can't imagine. I can imagine eating what she needs to eat in order to just maintain herself. Especially if she's most likely fighting and training a lot of the time, if she's anything like her mother. Yeah, it probably takes a lot of energy. However, we see Zillion's like, mutilated rabbit stew is so creamy. It just melts in your mouth. It's just getting everywhere. I could eat this all day. You heard nothing. But with that being the case, mutilated rabbit. I've heard of wood boars before, like forest boar. I've never heard of mutilated. Is mutilated rabbit actually a thing? Or is it like just 7 Deadly Sins propaganda? I don't know. Mutilated rabbit. And it's stew, too. Interesting. But with it being the case, we see that like any good older sibling, any good older brother, Belt is like, you're gonna get a gut. And like, it's true. Look at your boy. I used to be thinner. But then I ate. And then I ate some more. And I didn't move. And then I was no longer thin. So you will get a gut. Also, your face will puff up. Also, I mean, it's fine. I can still mostly do this. And it gets better. But like, I used to not have to do this. This used to never happen. I lost myself. But let's see. But I do love Zana's response here. She goes, "I will beat your behind." Look at that guy with the pencil. But but simultaneously, I love every reaction. Once again, the further characterization of these kids is really, really nice. Zana, violence immediately. Belt, teasing. Zillion actually feeling a little bit ashamed and slowing down a bit, gulping down her meal, be like, fine, okay. And Belt immediately just not being intimidated. Like, oh, scary. Oh no, would you look at that? My baby sister, who's 3 times my size, is gonna whoop me. Can't fly though. What are you gonna do if I just fly up? Like presumably. And remember, I think Belt is the second oldest sibling, and Sixtus is the third. So if Sixtus already has his spirit spear, or a spirit sword, his spirit weapon, essentially, you know that Belt's got it on him. It may be a belt for all we know. So yeah, I understand why he's chilling. And plus, siblings. So like, if you have siblings, like notably, I don't blame. I guess maybe just a lot of scriptwriters are single children. The way siblings are portrayed in media when they're nice to each other. I mean, we are. Like, I'm not saying everyone's horrible to their sibling, but like this kind of playful animosity, this back with this ribbing, it's more natural versus like, that's my little bro, that's my big sis, yeah, we're pals, dudes, amigos forever, dog. But I will say this, your sibling, younger or older, is always going to be your first friend and your first op. It's a law of nature, alright? They will be your biggest ally and also your biggest enemy. It all depends on the moment, especially depending on how far apart you are from your sibling age-wise. But we see that Zana's like, oh, me beating the brakes off you aside, where did Mom go? And Zillion points out, oh, not sure. She said she needed to talk to Tiore, though. So, they left the rest of the family. Interestingly enough, though, it's only the 4 of them. Sixtus, Myrtle, and Tiore are all gone. And we see Pal. You know, Pal infuriates me on multiple levels. And most of them aren't its fault or their fault. I like to yap. I like to explain things. I like to have a thought process. I like to have reasoning behind the things I do and how I do them, right? I can tell you why I like Percy, Lance, Tristan, Gawain. I had paused. Nasians, Donnie, Anne, and different dice old. And Kion depends on the day. I can tell you why I like or dislike most characters. Even in other series, there are characters who I really, really dislike. I can give you a full stage lecture. I could probably sit down and make an hour-long video explaining why I don't like X character. I can't tell you why I don't like Pal. And that annoys me even more. Because I'm fine with not liking or liking things as long as I'm able to articulate them. If I can give my reasoning behind it. I just don't like Pal. Their existence is an insult to me, and I can't even tell you why, and that bothers me even more. It's like giving Pal some sort of power over me. Like, yes, you despise me, but you have no logic to it. I know! That doesn't make it any better. You're whack. But, of course, Pal goes ... And that's foreshadowing. As we see, golly, she's still... I do like this, though. I like this. I always say, if you're gonna introduce giants into your narrative, play it up. Play it up to scale. Like, really make them giant. And realistically, Diane is very, very tiny still. Realize, like, the average Titan from Attack on Titan is still bigger than Diane. Diane's only 33 feet tall. I say only. But, like, 33 feet tall is, like, 11 meters? I think, if I'm, like, doing my math correctly, because a meter is about a yard. It's rough. It's not exactly equal, but they're pretty close. It's like Diane's like 11-ish meters tall. So she's not necessarily too big. It's why if you go way back in the history of the channel where you see the Diane versus the 9 Titans video, like she's very clearly depicted as the underdog there because like she's just small. She's just generally small. But with that being the case, I do like that Nakaba ends up playing to the scale thing here. As people pointed out, though, yeah, Diane just be shifting size all the time. It's very hard to have size consistency with Diane, especially considering you do need to fit her into shots. Like, if you were to keep Diane respective to her full scale, she'd either always have to be squatting down, and even then she may not fit in frame. Because, like, I don't know about y'all, but when I squat, I go about half my height. Just about. Like, yeah, about half of my height, typically, whenever I squat down. But then, if I squat down and lean forward, at best, I'm compressed to, like, a third of my height. If Diane did that in every single shot, she still wouldn't fit, because she's 10 feet tall. For reference, the next tallest Sin, I'm pretty sure, is Escanor at like 11 or 12 feet when he's full-size the one mode. Then it's Bon, who's, I believe, 6'11". She just wouldn't fit. So I get why Nakaba doesn't keep her to scale at all times, because that would literally be impossible and improbable most of the time. Like, it wouldn't be a smart artistic choice. So I get why he does it, but at the same time, I love when he plays into it. Look at Chiyoda here. She's barely the size of her mom's head. And I think that's fantastic. But we see. They're having a little chat. As Diane says, well, Chiyoda, I knew it would take a lot for you. Oh, well. Something of the sentence whooped me in the live reaction, and it's going to whoop me here. But I'm going to get it on my second try. Watch. Well, Chiyoda, I knew it'd take a lot for a problem to get you down, of all people, of all my children. But this is what you're thinking, isn't it? So, and one thing I do like here, and it's something that I'll bring up later, again, in a matter of defense for my glorious goat, King of the Fairies, Harlequin. But remember, Diane didn't have a mom. She had Matrona, but I wouldn't really say Matrona counts as a mom. Not in the traditional sense. Matrona was very much a drill instructor who maybe occasionally fed her. Like, that's not a mother. Diane has no frame of reference. She was abandoned by her parents, I'm pretty sure. Or, like, I think it's just giant culture. You get born, and typically you weren't raised. It's kind of like, what is it? What is that? I'm thinking of a specific species where you kind of just get born and you kind of, well, I guess kind of like turtles, but like sea turtles, but sea turtles end up having to like fight for their life. Giants are usually left amongst other giants, while sea turtles will lay eggs and dip out. But Diane doesn't have a frame of reference for being a mother. She really doesn't. And like, even in her time in the series, you can't even really argue she had like a surrogate mother. Merlin didn't play that role. Elizabeth couldn't play that role. So Diane's really going in blind, and I do love how she tackles it and how good she is at it for the most part, right? Like, Myrtle loves her. She's given Myrtle love. Her kids trust her enough to come and talk to her and her exclusively. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. And I like that she's genuinely getting the chance to be a mother and not be a bad one. Or an absent one. Or one we never get to tackle in the narrative. I'm looking at you, Hinata. I'm looking at you. But, like, that's great. That's fantastic. I love it. But we see that since she knows her daughter so well, not only does she realize it would take quite the problem to get her down, but she's also able to guess that, oh, okay. It's like, if I had to hazard one, you're wondering if Nasians is your mom and dad's son. You think that he might be a brother to all of you. And once again, a very valid concern. Notably, I do not have any adopted siblings. And with that being the case, I can never begin to imagine what that would be like, especially in a more immature state. Like, I'm always old. So my thought process and how I've tackled things in life has fundamentally changed. But I can't imagine being however old Chiyoda is supposed to be, whether that is 18, assuming they're all septuplets, or younger. Like, you can't say older, but younger than that. Yeah, I understand why this would be such a big concern. And why, while Diane is kind of just like, Chiyoda would be heavily concerned about it, as she says, I heard the rumors before about your first child being a victim of a changeling plot. That's why you strictly prohibited Puck from all that nonsense. Wait! Here's the thing. Did Puck do it? Or do they just not know? Because I'm sorry. I don't know about y'all. If I was King of the Fairies, if me, your boy, was King of the Fairies, and I knew who did it, They are not living. like, I don't know. The fact, and like, once again, I've given credit to possibly Puck or whoever the swamper is, but I'll give him credit for having the nerve, the gall, the absolute madman, mania, whatever you want to call it, the cojones to take the firstborn of the fairy king and the giant queen. That's still crazy to me. But if they know who did it, I know they're attempting to be kind, sweet, rule execution. You will be made an example of to make sure it never happens again. And to be fair, it didn't. So who knows? Maybe they did know the original person and did make an example out of them. Because notably, it's only Myrtle. If the person who did it was still alive, and they were bold enough to do it with the first one, they may have tried it with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They may have tried it. But at the same time, they may not have been able to do it. So maybe King and Diane got their get back. But I need to know. Especially, here's the thing. If Puck did it, King. Entrails across the entire realm. String him up across the fairy tree, piece by piece, bit by bit. You took my what? My firstborn? After I waited how long for this? King. Me personally. Spirit Spear. Second form. Increase. I want his atoms. Not his bones, not his organs, not his molecules, his atoms. Eviscerated. I will summon all 4. I will summon a 5th Spirit Spear. Forget 4. I'm summoning 5. They're all using increase. And they're all tearing you to ribbons. Because what? But, of course, we don't know. We don't know if they got their get back, if it was actually Puck or anything like that. Because he was just forbidden from the nonsense. Notably, she says that's why you strictly prohibited Puck from all that nonsense. But changelings are apparently a common fairy thing. So I'm assuming it wasn't Puck. Because there's no way you let bro live up to that. But with that being the case, we see that Teore's like, they were just rumors, so I didn't pay them much attention. But 2 years ago, when I ran into Nasi in the fairy realm, it surprised me. I mean, how close to you and Dad can you even get? And we see Diane be like, "Oh, you mean our looks?" Which is nice. That is true. Like, thing is, once again, I'm not sure about y'all, but at least for me, for the longest time, I didn't look like either of my parents. I was an anomaly. Like it straight up looked like neither of them. Not in their younger phase. Like, I think for, like, the slightest time, if you squinted at me, I looked like my mom did when I was a baby. And by baby, I mean, like, fresh out my mama. Like, we looked the same as newborns, and then I just mutated. And then for, like, decades after that, I just looked like neither of them. Now I'm just a carbon copy of my mom. Like, legit. I'm literally just the male version of her. Except taller. So, yeah, my mom's 1.5 feet tall. But taller and male. We have the exact same face. So now it clearly looks like I'm her kid, which works out. And I have too much of my dad's mentality and access and instincts and the blood test to all for confirm that I'm his kid too. So, like, I know that, but I understand it. My mom was proud when I finally started looking like her. And to be fair, my dad was also proud when I started exhibiting his mannerisms. So, like, I get the pride. Like, look, even Diane is like, oh, she's like, oh, you mean our looks? Because she likes it passed on. Though you can also see the bit of nerve from the blush and even the sweat drop. And we see that Tori's like, no, a lot more than that. And she just starts cold, not even cold, hot snitching all over Nasi. And she says, Nasi doesn't have a gender, just like Pao. How many other humans are like that? Do you think? None. Maybe, possibly, actually. I'm not sure if that... I've heard of being born with both, but I never actually heard of being born with neither. Like, just, like, built like a doll. I don't know. Intriguing. Open the door, sure. I may have to look into that. But, as she says, and only fairies and giants can adapt to air in this realm, right? And most of all, I just found about this just now. That giants adapt to fairy... That's interesting. Notably, I still think it's kind of weird. Here's the thing. Part of me gets why you do it the way you did. In terms of why Nakama did it. because with the Giants being a failure, just make them smaller. So of course the Giants didn't have their own realm. But I low-key wish the Giants got their own deity. I wish Cass was just a, like, grandfather deity to all the races and the father deity to humans. I really wish the Giants got their own realm and their own deity. Because they are the only... I mean, I guess Chaos is their deity, but no realm. The Mortal Realm isn't called the Giant and Mortal Realm. It's called the Mortal Realm. Megadozer is apparently the location for a chunk of them, and apparently other locations exist, but we just don't know about them. Like, dog, I don't know. Like, I do kind of wish they weren't done so dirty, but this is a history of Giants. Like, Giants rarely ever get any sort of street cred and something like that. It's just not a thing that Nakaba likes to do for some reason. Like, the Giants always kind of get the short end of the stick. Just look at Diane's characterization and character arc throughout a majority of the series. She's consistently being used for other people's characters' arc. Like, it feels like Nakaba didn't really want to write him. And at the same time, I also understand on, like, a narrative level, or, yeah, because this is narrative level. Listen to meta-narrative level. But kind of sort of meta-narrative. Where you make sure that Giants can adapt to Fairy Realm Air, and you make sure they don't have their own realm, because then you would have to split King and Diane up, right? You can't have the Giant Queen living in the Fairy Realm when there's a giant realm that needs to be watched over and taken care of by her. But if you localize all the giants to the fairy realm, King and Diane get to be together, and Diane can still interact with their people. So, like, I see the vision, even if I don't like it. And I do like the detail that they can adapt to the fairy realm era. Notably, Toyota described it as thick and sweet, mostly. So I'm assuming the main reason the giants are able to just... oh, yeah. Oh, that fairy sausage. Woo! And this live just fine. I'm assuming that's because of their size, right? Like, the scale of them. Their lungs and their, like, filtration systems are likely... I'm not going to say a lot. Yeah, probably a lot more advanced than our own internal systems. Comparatively, at least. Like, comparatively speaking. I'd assume their internal biological systems are more advanced than ours. Or at least larger than ours. Meaning they could take more. Merlin struggles to breathe here because of how tiny his capacity is and how his biology isn't adapted to it. Meanwhile, giants probably... not the most survivability. Like, they wouldn't survive in the demon realm. But their scale increase makes sense why they could survive there just fine. Unlike humans. And we see that... all that aside, all the giant lore aside, Tori ends up dropping La Bomba, as she says. But it turns out Nasi was abandoned as a child too. And we're talking about an 18-year-old here. Just like Myrtle. Yo, how crazy would it be if Nasians isn't actually their kid? Like, I know that would be like such a strange twist to include now. But like... imagine. I honestly don't even think it'd be too crazy. Like, imagine we do all this and he's just still not their kid. We just never know. I mean, I would... I like Myrtle, but I wouldn't be mad if Nasians was the kid. This is the conundrum. This is the 50-50, right? Nasians is the kid. We get a Cayenne kid that's relevant to the plot. Then we kind of get to bend the rules about Cayenne kids being able to stay relevant in the plot by having the mixed race thing, the mixed species thing, count as too complex for the non-human barrier to stop, and thusly Nasians can still go into the realm. However, without that being the case, if we just hard lose Nasians because he's actually the eldest prince of the fairy realm, I want my boy. Not my boy. I want them to still be relevant, please. One thing I really like here, I like Diane's reaction. We get two separate reactions from the parents being hypothetically accused of having another kid here, but I think my favorite one is going to cumulatively come from Diane here, because she asks a very simple yet still extremely important question. Let's just pretend for a moment, all right, that you're right, and Nasians is your brother. Though, interestingly, I wouldn't Well, I guess once again, Diane's been calling him a boy for the past 2 years, and heck, I've been calling him a boy for the past 2 to 3 years as well. So it's gonna take time for me to work out the habit too. But technically, he's not a boy right now because he's still not a brother either. Just like Pow isn't. He's just another one of your kids. They're just another one of your kids, not necessarily a boy and or girl yet due to the lack of love lock. But with it being the case, Diane naturally asks, "Is that bad for you? Is there a problem here? What's going on?" And that, once again, kind of makes sense. Because, Diane loves Myrtle. King loves Myrtle. Tiore loves Myrtle. Sixtus loves Myrtle. Belt, Zana, Zillion, Pow. They all love Myrtle. Like, no matter what. Even if it was revealed right this instant, and they did a DNA test in medieval times and found out that Myrtle is in fact just a random human, while Nasians is their eldest biological kid, they've already spent enough time with Myrtle. Myrtle is their older sibling and their eldest son. He's just adopted. So Diane having this reaction here makes sense because in her mind, most likely, even though there is a little bit of guilt there now that she's realizing that, oh, this most likely is the case, that likely is my kid, she just asked the rational question, does it really matter? Because you just get another brother. Neat. Better to have two older brothers than one. Well, I guess they technically already have 3 older brothers in the case of Tiore, at least. Possibly 4 with Pow, and then just make it possibly 5 with Nasian's thrown in there. But as much as I like Diane's reaction here, I like Tiore's as well, where she says, "No, of course not. I love Nasi a whole bunch." Meaning that she's perfectly fine with accepting Nasians, which does make sense. Notably, Nasians believes that the king and queen aren't too pleased with them, but as he'll find out, no, it's quite the opposite. But yeah, of course, Tiore doesn't mind, and I bet none of the other kids would mind either. Just new older brother. New older brother just got dropped. Meta got changed. We got a new older sibling now. They clearly wouldn't care. But Tiore, being the youngest, likely being mentally, especially for her species, maybe like a baby. And even for our species, assuming she's 18, which I still don't believe. I feel like it would have been stated their septuplets already if it really was just as simple as Tiore being 18. But being a teenager, even if she was 18, having this kind of emotional reaction to the possibility that the brother you've known all this time isn't actually your brother, it kind of makes sense. Because she naturally asks, "But then where does Myrtle fit in then? Does this mean Myrtle's no longer you and Dad's son? He's not a big brother any longer?" Once again, logically speaking, and this is why I call this chapter a clump of contrivances, this shouldn't even be a question. Myrtle's still going to be your older brother. He's just going to be adopted now. Nasians would be your older brother. And of course, there'd be implications that come with that, such as possibly treating you differently, not as a friend, but more as an older sibling, whatever that means. Considering Nasians does have a sibling relationship already established with Dolores, he likely transitioned to it very smoothly. And obviously, Nasians and Myrtle would still likely have some conflict. I can't imagine, hypothetically, if I suddenly had like another brother I had to accept. But still, no, it doesn't mean that Nasians no longer is your family. He's still going to be your brother. He's still going to be... Well, no, it doesn't mean that Myrtle's no longer your family or he's not going to be your brother. It doesn't mean anything like that. All it means is that now you have 2 older brothers. You have an extra oldest brother. But that's the logical way you look at it. That's the detached way you look at it. Tiore just had her world shattered. She got new brother DLC that she didn't pay for. It just showed up on her gaming account, and she was not ready for it. So of course she would have a much more drastic reaction, especially considering I'm assuming adoptions just aren't as common in this time period. We know they're orphanage. I think they're orphanages, right? I think so. I think Hendrickson runs an orphanage alongside Dreyfus while they both do their regular jobs. I think, but the main thing is, especially probably in the fairy realm, especially where Tiore spent a majority of her time growing up, being adopted probably isn't common. In this time period, I highly doubt being adopted is common. And thusly, in Tiore's underdeveloped mind, most likely, if she gets a new older brother, the new one has to go. Or the old one has to go. Which, naturally, logically doesn't make sense, but in her mind, makes sense why her brain immediately leaps to that. Once again, she may be like 13 in human years. And then, by proxy, she may be like a baby. Or like a newborn in giant and fairy years because of the lifespan thing. So I'm not shocked that she's having such a drastic reaction. And we even see that she just doesn't... And now this admittedly does feel a little bit stupid, but once again, I remember being a kid. I remember having drastic reactions, whatever my parents told me, so I'm not going to get on Teodore's case too much for this. She does have a very overdramatic reaction, in my opinion. She says, because that can't happen. It's just too hard for all of us. And she doesn't let Diane explain or offer a solution or offer any sort of path. She just immediately flies off, which is the one thing her mother can't chase her for or like do to chase after her, because literally Diane can't fly without like leveling a whole chunk of the area. That's a little bit unfair. But yeah, Teodore just runs off. And we even see Diane reach for like, Teodore! But she can't chase. And actually, once again, she's in the fairy realm. She tries to uproot everything. Who knows what kind of damage she could do to all the roots. And we see Pal listening in, like they're going to spread the chaos even more. Oh, wow. Gosh darn it, Pal. But with it being the case, I get Teodore's reaction. It makes sense within the context of the age or lack of age of the characters by how vague it is. And I can understand the shock horror due to the time period being fundamentally different than what most would be used to. Adoption is more normal in our time period than it is theirs by a long shot. Like, drastically different. So I'm not shocked that she's so shocked and is worried about losing the eldest brother she's known for all of her life. But, once again, I understand Diane's reaction, where she probably doesn't think it's that deep. She's like, I don't think it's really that deep. That's the thing most people probably don't think it's that deep. You just get an adopted brother and a new biological one. Neat. You now have 8 kids. That doesn't change much. They were already doing just fine spreading their love to 7. All of them clearly seemed loved, well-raised, fed, clothed, all that. So just be another one. But of course, Teodore doesn't see it that simply. And of course, it is still more complex than I'm making it. I'm looking at it so detached because I don't have kids. I'm not King nor Diane. So obviously this would be more simple for me than it would be for them. And we see that the main man himself gets thanked. Let me hit the fairy voice real quick.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, I have to thank you. I can't thank you enough, kind Myrtle. And you too, Sixtus.
Which is, that's so sweet. Like, look at, and this is clearly meant to be a juxtaposition to make it feel like the emotions are even higher by the time the script gets flipped. And it works. Because look at how happy Myrtle is, bro. Look at him cheese it. Look at him cheese. He's so happy. He's so happy to actually be able to help and be considered the eldest prince and do the eldest prince. Like, this is his life. And once again, I understand. Oh, because he's only 18. I know only 18 is crazy, right? Especially considering, at least where I'm from, that's an adult, right? Heck, in other nations, you're an adult at like 16. So, like, why am I saying only 18? He's still a teenager. Still very, very impressionable. And of course, Myrtle's been living with an identity crisis that's been repeatedly enforced on him for his entire existence. As far as he can remember, he doesn't have, well, not doesn't, he just has never fit in. So these moments where it seems like he's accepted and thanked by the people that he's supposed to be the next ruler of, or I'm not actually sure how that, like, once again, with King being, and the fairy royals essentially being seemingly enough immortal, like once again, Gerharde wasn't sealed away. Gerharde's not like the Demon Clan. Gerharde just lived straight 4,000 years. So I'm not exactly sure how the line of succession would work for this family. And even giants are, once again, they're the only other species to not have, like, well, you know, goddesses too. The only 2 species we have age caps for, like humans and demons, I think about it. But we've even seen the demon age cap be broken. So I'm not sure how the line of succession would work, but regardless, Myrtle being able to perform those princely duties, it makes him happy. It's a part of him. And he's afraid of losing that part of him by blood. And of course, in a world where blood matters most, like a non-meritorial election system or anything like that, no democracy, no, like straight monarchical royalty, having your princely title stripped away by some random dude who showed up 2 years ago, of course it's going to haunt him. And it justifies his reaction later on in the chapter. And I do like how Sixtus is to like, hey, I didn't really do much, even though he did come in and save Myrtle. But we see that Myrtle and Sixtus wave them off, the little fairy family. And we see that Sixtus goes on to say, oh, it's a good thing that Puck and that baby recover pretty quick from the fairy incense, or the anti-fairy incense, that Kilbagog, I think that's their name, Kilbagog ended up using last chapter. And we see that Myrtle, once again, he's still feeling a little bit sad, and he's thinking, as he says, yeah. And we see that Sixtus is like, well, would you hear that? They called you their guardian angel. Which is nice. I mean, we don't hear them say that, but, you know, save panel time. And I think that is sweet that they call him that. But naturally, Mr. Identity Crisis over here, especially in a world where there actually are, like, angels and goddesses and stuff like that, He's like, huh, an angel, huh? I'll be honest, I'd rather be a giant or fairy. Which is, it's sad, but once again, it makes sense, right? Because that's all he's wanted to be. He's just wanted to fit in. And he never could. By his own biology. Like, it's not even a slight thing. No, he literally cannot live biologically the same way the rest of his family does. Because he's not biologically one of them. Which is so unfortunate. Once again, the tragedy writes itself. I do like the way that Nakba decided to take this plot line. Especially considering, for the most part, outside of Kilbagog being recently introduced, this plot line seems mostly entirely independent from Camelot. This whole fairy royalty subplot, it's exclusive to the fairy realm and King and Diane and their kids and Nasi and stuff like that. We haven't had a spoken line from a knight since Timeskip. We haven't seen Gawain, haven't seen Lance, clearly haven't seen Tristan, and we've seen Percy, but we haven't heard him. So this whole nice little section of the plot, I like it. I like that we're stretching out and expanding on these characters. And we see naturally, now that's been brought back up, now that they had the conversation, it immediately comes to mind. Sixtus, about our talk before. And we see that Sixtus goes on and say, hey, broski, no worries, no need to say it. I know what you're after. Let's go talk to Dad, alright? We'll ask him to let you have L-deor. Now, here's the thing. I'm assuming the reason they think this works is because they're still somewhat in denial. But, like, once again, leading into the contrivances, I'm not sure what they expect would happen if Myrtle was to consume L-deor, when you think about it. Because, unless it's like a permanent Mullen pill effect, right? Like, maybe that's what they're hoping for. Because he currently takes Mullen pills in order to be able to exist and breathe and live in the fairy realm as it is right now. But maybe L-deor would be a permanent solution for that. But even then, the way L-deor is described, it's very exclusively something that stops you from being on the brink, or being cursed, or being sick. It never fully takes away that affliction. It's not like... It's kind of like allergy medicine, essentially. But then again, so is a Mullen pill, essentially. Where it fixes the problem as it is now. Takes care of all those symptoms, but if you have the sickness again, the moment L-deor would wear off, just like the moment your allergy meds wear off, you're suddenly allergic to things again. And heck, you're still always allergic, just like Myrtle will still always not be a fairy. It's not like L-deor is going to magically turn him into a fairy. But maybe they're hoping it'd be a more permanent Mullen pill solution. But even then, that wouldn't change anything. But that's the tragedy of Myrtle. As we see, he says, I can't fly like a fairy. I have no wings, but I'm not as big or as strong as a giant either. All my siblings resemble my mother or father in some way. I'm the only one who doesn't. If there's anything that'd make me your brother at all, it's the ability to adapt to the fairy realm. Would Father let me have something so precious? Which is so many things in this line. So many things. Number one, that is true. He doesn't look like King or Diane. I brought it up before. He kind of looks like Dahlia, which would be hilarious. Imagine he still was some sort of fairy hybrid, but his fairy blood was just that thin. But like, he does low-key look like Dahlia. Long face, longer hair, everything. I don't know. So he looks like Dahlia, and something with the hair color, he kind of looks like Gloxinia. But that aside, I can understand that. I can fully understand the reaction he goes to have on later in this chapter. Because it's like, this would be something that would haunt at you, eat at you. Especially if you're supposed to be the eldest. Like, notably, I'm the older... No, well, technically, I'm actually very baby in my, like, generational line of family. Like, I have a bunch of older cousins who are full-grown, married, kids, everything that works. So I've had cousins even older than that. And I'm not talking, like, cousins as in, like, cousins, like, you know, first or second removed. I'm like, no, I'm talking like first generation. Like, they're literally my first cousin. Like, their dad is my dad's brother. Like, straight up, they're already later into the stages of life. But for the cousins I am older than, because still I'm old myself, so I do have younger cousins who are like, I think my youngest cousin is a baby, like legit, maybe just fresh out their mama. And then one of my the second youngest cousin besides that is like a year younger than me. But regardless, I understand being that elder sibling, you do kind of want to take up that leadership role. that protective role. And how can you do that if you can't even prove that you're family? What governance, or not necessarily control, because control sounds weird, but like what kind of jurisdiction do you have over people who are not yours biologically, especially if you're so biologically different from them? Of course, that'd be haunting, that'd be concerning, and it's why Myrtle's so focused on it. And we see that Sixtus, he tries to hype up King. Sixtus says, didn't you say that Dad's a kinder king than anyone out there? Come on now. You know he's going to give it to you. Which does make sense, but at the same time, I'll defend King in a second. We'll get to it in a second. As we see, Myrtle has hope. He smiles, believing in his dad as they leap up and fly up. And then Sixtus tweaks. He's like, huh? And then Myrtle's like, you good, little bro? And we see him walk and see. That's Father. And Gnostians? What are they doing? And we see that King, oh King, he says, heed my words, O Orium vines. Suddenly all the vines that surround this area converge. They all begin to hover over King and glow. And we see that King completes the incantation. Bring the tears of Eris, hiding in the light, to my hand. And bada bing, bada boom, la droga deor. Very, very little of it, though. Notably, I highly doubt that's more than like 2 ounces of it. Like, I'm not sure how big King's hands are, but like, I believe 2 ounces, at least for the size of my hand. So it's like this much, maybe, especially in that tiny of a bottle. So there's very little La Droga deor left, which implies a couple things. Either A, this is all that gets produced, what we'll find out to be only once in a millennium, which is crazy. Or 2, this is all that gets produced over the past who knows how many millenniums, because we don't know who's used the La Droga deor in the past. So maybe that. And or 3, he's already used some of it. If this is the bottle that spawns in every 1,000 years or so, he may have already tried using La Droga deor on Myrtle. He may not remember it, as Myrtle points out. I don't know. I don't remember Dad telling me about that. Could you explain it? But it's just as likely that King did try it in the past. That's just as possible. But it just didn't work. Because Myrtle's not sick. He isn't. He's not cursed. He's just human. And the Droga deor can do fantastic things. Bring bodies and souls back from the brink. But it can't change your biology. So I'm hoping King claps back next chapter, because he's about to get clapped on. As we see, King goes on to say, this is La Droga deor, taken from the Eris flowers that grow atop the sacred tree once every millennium. It can heal any sickness or curse and bring souls and bodies back from the brink of death. And we see that Sixtus, once again, he'd only been told about it. If anything, he thought it may have been a rumor. But he's like, wow, Myrtle, it really does exist. And Myrtle is already putting the pieces together. He's like, why is Dad and Gnostians here? Why is Dad summoning La Droga deor for Gnostians? And we see he goes to speak up. Father? But King, likely due to being in his realm and having his guard lowered, doesn't sense his kids there. Doesn't even notice them out of his peripheral vision. As he says, listen to me, Gnostians. This is my gift to you. I want you to have this. You know what? I'll hop into defending King in a second. But I do love this panel of King. He looks very, very good. Once again, he's looking very drippy. But we see, naturally, this does way, way, way too much damage. Myrtle is devastated. And we see he books it away. Straight up gone. And even Sixtus is tweaking a little bit. He's like, what the heck? He's giving our treasure to a human? What is he thinking? And we see Sixtus just has to put the pieces together. But Myrtle did. And Myrtle, he leaps down. And he goes off, hitting the dash and making it go fast. And we see that King says, don't worry. No need to be shy now. I just want to be of your assistance. And I earnestly hope you can wake up the night of prophecy. King's trying to do the good thing here. He's trying to be a good dad. Once again, I've seen a bunch of people turn on King and say he's a bad dad. Once again, we'll get into that in a second. Because, don't worry, it ain't just people outside the narrative that are cooking King. It's people inside the narrative as well. As Gnostian says, I truly appreciate your consideration for me. I'm afraid I can't accept this. And King, oh? What do you mean? And we see that Nassim just starts tearing into King as he says, if you had this kind of drug, why didn't you tell me about it sooner? Why bring it up with me now? I can explain this. Was it amusing to see me run around creating medicines only to fail every time? That's in very bad taste. And what angers me the most is how thick-headed you are, Fairy King. If you call yourself a father, you should know who actually needs this L-deor. And then it's Myrtle. And then we'll address the Myrtle thing in a second. Here's the thing, though. There are a couple reasons why I'm actually not too mad at King. I don't think this makes him a bad dad or anything like that. And of course, this may be me huffing King copium, so feel free to correct me. Number one, Nasians, did you not just hear him tell you, for this part in particular, before we get into the Myrtle thing, because that's a separate thing that we'll talk about, but Nasians asks, if you had L-deor, why didn't you tell me about it sooner? Why bring it up to me now? Was it amusing to see me run around creating medicines only to fail every time? That's in very bad taste. No, Nasians. He met you 2 years ago. In King's perspective, that may have been yesterday. Maybe 2 days ago. Nasians. He was waiting to see if he could trust you. With, once again, as King says, something that comes around once every millennium. Nasians, that's 10 generations of humans if they all lived to 100 and had a kid at 100. Realistically, like, I forget how gens progress. I think it's like every 30 years. So that's like possibly upwards of 30 generations of humans, Nasians. Of course he's not going to give it to you when you show up. Even if he immediately assumed or immediately knew that you were his kid, he still needed to figure out if he could trust you, Nasians. This isn't some special willy-nilly thing he could have whipped up, even if he did know your ability, right? Because then, if you hypothetically want to argue for Nasians, well, Nasians has Poison Master. He could reproduce L-deor infinitely. Presumably, that's probably the plot point that we're going to go with here, in order for Nasians to get what he wants, and Myrtle to get what he wants, and all that. Once again, I don't think Myrtle's going to be, like, executed or anything. That'd be crazy. But, with that being the case, Nasians, that's not something you just give up. It's a treasure that only spawns once every 1,000 years. He's not going to just give it to you. So I think that part is wrong. And the second part that I feel is wrong, once again, I've kind of already glazed on it earlier. If you call yourself a father, you should know who actually needs this drug. No, Nasians, he doesn't. Maybe Nasians hasn't put the pieces together yet either. Maybe he's like sixth, and maybe he's just not as smart as Myrtle or Tiori, which is crazy. But Nasians, really? Dude. What will the drug do for him? What will L-deor do for him? He's a human, Nasians. It's not going to suddenly make him a fairy or a giant. That's not how that works, buddy. Pal. So what good would giving it to him do? Like, legitimately, and I know Nasians is caught in the heat of the moment. And I do genuinely like that he is feeling emotion about this. He's feeling passionate for someone like Myrtle, someone who hasn't even treated him nice this entire time. I do like the fact that he is very, very passionate about his feelings towards King and how King played the situation. And once again, I don't think King did this smoothly. I think Diane and King, especially if they ever had suspicions, they should have laid it out. But at the same time, it's not like they can really run a DNA test or anything like that. That simply doesn't exist. I'm not even sure how they would confirm that Nasians is their kid. Yeah, he's a fairy that happens to look like them. Oh well. Belt ended up looking a lot like Helbrum. Does that suddenly mean Helbrum is Belt's father and not King? Like, clearly there are more layers to this. So I get why they didn't sit down and immediately try to explain it. But at the same time, for this thing, Nasians, you're a doctor. Or at least trying to be. If a drug is going to be ineffective, would you waste it? Especially one that only comes out, once again, every 1,000 years? Are you really gonna burn that? And once again, burning that sounds bad. I'm talking about this phrased horribly, I'll be honest. Like, I'm not necessarily doing the best job of it. But specifically, I can't get too mad at King because King made the most reasonable play. He waited. He figures you're his first kid, which Nasians may not know, so there's that. And he may know Nasians' abilities now, meaning he could reproduce more of L-deor. King not giving it to Myrtle makes sense, because King knows it's not going to do anything. And why waste a resource that could be used later? And also, like King mentions, he hopes this can be used to wake up Percy. And Nasians, you may have been chilling here in the fairy realm for the past 2 years, but Britannia looks like trash. A chunk of it, fat chunks of it, and numerous amounts of its people are missing. The very fundamental world as you know it is going to be destroyed if Percy doesn't wake up. So by giving you this to use on Percy, he's trying to actively save the world. So like, I'm not going to be against King here. I don't think he's a bad dad. I think he was reasonable. I think he waited, and I think I would do the same in his situation. Once again, especially if I didn't know, because there's no way to concretely know unless Nasians somehow mystically, magically manifest one of their abilities specifically, and Poison Master evolves or something like that, and it just ends up being disaster, and King can recognize that. He's going off assumptions and fears and playing it safe. So Nasians, I like that he tweaks out here. It's good for the emotion, and I like that Myrtle interprets it the way that he does. It's going to lead to interesting character conflict. But ultimately, I do think Nasians went a little bit too hard on my Goat King. So back up, Bucko. However, we see that Myrtle is set up. Nice and clean and buttery.
I sense strong feelings. Deep, dark feelings. Feelings of rage and despair. These could be useful.
So yeah, Myrtle's getting turned into like a fairy giant. And not in the good way. Like, y'all remember Ordo? Y'all remember Ordo? Yeah. That's gonna be Myrtle. That boy in danger. But regardless, very W chapter. Like, I admit, it is a whole bunch of coincidences and bad timing. Like, if Myrtle had showed up after King defended himself, like he's presumably going to do next chapter against Nasians, or if he had showed up before this entire event, or if L-deor wasn't magically mystically mentioned at this perfect time, and something like that. Like, there are so many things that kind of need to happen. If Theory didn't have such a dramatic overreaction and was loud enough screaming that Pal could hear it, and it can cause more character drama with the rest of the scene. Like, there are things that are a little bit contrived, but I think the contrivances lead to a better story. Good, and I'll admit, as a guy who's all about, well, logic this, logic that, not all stories work if written purely logically. Most stories wouldn't happen if purely written logically. So, you know I gotta give it a pass. Very, very, very worthy W chapter. However, if you somehow made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave. Fairy giant. One word. I'm gonna make it specific. One word. Or 2 words, whatever y'all feel like. In the comment section down below. I just thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also want to become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the 32-minute live 33-minute live reaction to this very chapter, along with ad-free variations of all my videos. And you can $25 patron or $25 member to order whatever video you want. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Connor Plays, Greyhound, Atkins Void, Astro, Red Wolf 4765, Eternal Flame, and Teen Mitgow. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Steron, Sean, Panda Goat, Midnight Lord 21, Metal Solid Crisis, Kevin, Igneel, and EHAC1. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn Mornings Lazo. And I'd like to give a big thank you to our $10 member, Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $10 patrons, Joaquin and Idemo Kami. Along with another juicy thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09. And I'd like to give a final Giga Gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.